It's always a chus to share different times in the year with this special kehillah, and we want to take something with us as we draw towards the end of Tisha B'Av. And our wives are sweeping the house, as it says in Shulchan Aruch, Nikras Mashiach Tzidkenu. And if we can have a part in bringing Mashiach, that would be a tremendous thing. The Medrash in Eicha writes, Oma HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yirmiyah. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Yirmiyah, Ani doima hayoim, today, for me, it's like somebody who had a ben yochid, an only child. V'asa le chuppah, and he married him off. And the child died. I'm so sad. I'm in such pain. Yirmiyah, do something about it. Go to call Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Ben Amram, Moshe Rabbeinu. Get them out of their graves, and they should come and cry. They should daven. Says Yirmiyah, nobody knows where Moshe is buried. I also don't know where he's buried. Says Hashem, go to the edge of the Yarden and call Ben Amram, Ben Amram. So Yirmiyah goes, and Moshe Rabbeinu has no idea what Yirmiyah wants. You don't know what's happening? So he goes to Ma'aras HaMachpelah. Says, Avraham, Yitzchak, wake up, help. Finally, he calls the Malachim, and the Malachim call Avraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, and they all cry, and they cry. Moshe Rabbeinu cries, but to no avail. It doesn't help the situation. Until something incredible happens. At that moment, jumps out Rochel Imeinu, and she says the following, Va'omra, and I have to quote, because it's quite incredible. Ribono shel olam, Hashem, golui v'yodua lefonecha, you know, sheYaakov Avdecha, Yaakov your servant, he served my father Lavan for 7 years for me. And the time of my marriage came, my father told me, let us swap around. And Leah, who's the older girl, will marry Yaakov and not you. And it was very, very difficult for me. It was super hard. But I told my husband, the Simonim, we should know that it's Rachel and it's not a Leah. It's for that reason that chuppahs, they say, la, it's Leah. That's where the source of the minhag is. Nobody should make any mistakes. We had Simonim, that nothing should happen. Afterwards, I changed my mind, says Rachel. I withheld my wrath and my desire. And I had rachmanas on my sister. That she shouldn't get embarrassed. In the evening, they swapped us. And I gave my sister the simonim. I gave her the signs that she should know. Not only that. If the Medrash wouldn't say it, you would not be able to say it. Shenichnasti tachas hamita, says Rachel. I went underneath the bed where Yaakov was. And Yaakov would be speaking to Leah, thinking it's Rachel. Vehi shoysekes, and Leah would stay quiet. Va'ani meshivosai, and I would answer. Kedei shelo yaki lekol achoisi, that he shouldn't say, whoa, that doesn't sound like my Rachel. V'gomalti chesed imo, I did that chesed with Leah. Says Rachel the following tefillah to the Ribono shel olam. Uma ani, me, I'm a boss of Adam. And I withheld my desire and I was Mevater, I gave in to my sister. and I didn't cause her embarrassment and shame. Ato melech chai v'kayom, Rachmon. What do you care? You jealous that they took an avodah zarah instead of you? Hashem, I was Mevater, and I'm human, flesh and blood. You be Mevater. Miyad niskal gelu rachmav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Hashem said, for you, Rachel, I'll do anything. I'll be Mevater. And then the pasuk says, Koil barama nishma nehi v'chi samrurim Rachel mevaka al banei. Rachel cries. What's her tears? What's her tefillah? What's she crying? Hashem, I was Mevater, you be Mevater. And on that it says, Koil ma Hashem mini koilech mi bechi Rachel, just stop crying. Ve'inayich min dima, stop tearing up. Ki yesh zecholi ful aseich, you're going to get schar for this. And in your zechus, Klal Yisrael are going to be redeemed. All the tefillahs of the Ovis HaKadoshim, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, nothing, didn't work. Avraham, Midas HaChesed, Midas HaVeiras, Avodah Zarah. Midas HaGevura, Avodah Zarah. Midas HaTorah, Yaakov Avinu, Moshe Raya Mehemner, Moshe Rabbeinu gave us the Torah. Doesn't help. Rachel Imeinu, who's Mevater, she's the one who helps. Why? Why? Why is that greater than Chesed, than Gevura, than Torah, than Moshe Rabbeinu? Everything, there's a problem. There's avodah zarah. So what does it help you Chesed? What does it help you Gevura? What does it help you Torah? When somebody's Mevater, it means, yes, I'm right. But nevertheless, we know in our lives, to be Mevater when it's easy is easy. To be Mevater, to give in when it's really difficult, when we know we're right, and the person has got such a chutzpah, how dare he? He's so unfaithful, it's so unethical. How could he do such a thing? And yet we're Mevater. That's a Rachel. You're a Rachel, and you can bring the Mashiach. The Gemara in Tiny says, Rabbi Loza, he davened for the Yom, there was no rain. He said 24 inonos. Davened 24 different tefillahs, nothing happened. Comes Rabbi Kiva, there's one step in front of the Yom and it says, Avinu Malkeinu, Ein Lonu Melech Eloto. Starts pouring, the dam's open. Why, says the Gemara? Not because this one's greater than the other, but because this is Mavir al Midoisav and he's not Mavir al Midoisav. He's Mevater, he gives in, and he doesn't give in. It was his midah. What do you mean? Yishomru lochem, pen yiftel avavachem, v'sartem v'avadatem elohim acherim. So we say in Shema, when there's going to be no rain. Yishomru lochem, pen yiftel avavachem, v'sartem v'avadatem lo yemoto, v'hadom v'lo yititen esivula. There's going to be no rain. So how did he make it rain? There was a reason why there was no rain. There was a reason why there was a famine. But there's nothing that Vitor can't overcome. Because Vitor is nothing about din. It's nothing about who deserves what. Who's right and who's wrong. It's all about, although you're right and he's wrong, nevertheless I'm going to give in. Rav Huna was ill, deathly ill. And Rav Papa came to visit him. And he saw that it's time to call the Chevra Kedisha. In the end, Rav Huna survived. And he said, Rav Papa said, bring the tachrichim, bring the shrouds. And he survived, and he was very embarrassed, Rav Papa, to see Rav Huna. And they asked Rav Huna, what did you see up there? What happened? And he said, there was a gezerah. There was a gezerah. I was supposed to go. I was 1 foot out. But then Hashem says, leave him. He's Ma'avir al Midoisav. He's Mevater. He doesn't, people bother him. He gives in. Let's let him live another few years. Being Mevater is Tchias HaMesim. To revive the dead. There was a big posek called the Minchas Yitzchak. He lived in Manchester. I knew his son, he davened in his shul. The Minchas Yitzchak was a Ilui when he was a bocha. When he came to marriage, they suggested him all kinds of shidduchim. Then they suggested a shidduch, and she was a big tzaddikus, but she was extremely ugly. I have to describe She was ugly. She had all sorts of rashes on her face. She was horrible. She's a wonderful person. And after 40 minutes, as the Chassidim do, he said, Malto, 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 L'chaim, L'chaim. That was it. They were engaged. And somebody whispered to the Minchas Yitzchak, he said, maybe you're such a Chassidish bucha, maybe you're taking your glasses off, you didn't actually look to see who she is. You know, Osa lekadish isho ad sheyir'eno. And he said, I saw her, and I made up my mind that once we've met, if I say no, then I'll be shoifech dam, I'll be spilling blood of another Jew. I prefer to be Mevater my whole life, not to have this world, and better not to hurt another Jew. I'll be Mevater. And they had a child, they got married, they had a child. And that child was called Beirish, and they knew him. And his first wife died, and he got remarried, and they never had children. And they went to the doctors, and the doctors said he is unable to have children. I knew this Beirish Weiss. He was a multimillionaire, and he had children kechoil hayam. The whole of Manchester and the whole of Borough Park and Williamsburg is full of vices from a vittel. A vittel can do trias amesim, and a vittel can bring a child to be born in this world. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, Yosichu bi, Yoishvei Shar. David HaMelech suffered tremendously in his life. And people would stand at street corners joking about David HaMelech. Yosichu bi, you prattle about me. Yoishvei Shar, the guy sitting, the mikveh news, the guy sitting on street corners. Oneginois, Shoisei Sheicha. The drunkards, the guys who have a pint in their hands, are making songs about David HaMelech, ridiculous, low songs, songs that are debasing him, putting him down. Says the Malbim, Be'ez, sheyosichu b'yoshvei shar, and they're making fun, they're joking, leitzonos of David HaMelech. David HaMelech doesn't say something, anything, and he's Mevater. And anybody knows what the next pasuk in Tehillim is? The next pasuk is Va'ani tfilosi lecha Hashem eis rotzoin. Says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, says David HaMelech, you've just created an eis rotzoin. You were Mevater, you created an eis rotzoin, and now you can daven for anything. And the skula neirah that when somebody is Mevater, he can be zoicha. There was a young chosen who got married, and he was very upset after his wedding because the photos were horrible. My daughter's wedding pictures are also horrible. That's because I refused to pay 15,000 shekel for a photographer. It's a different story. But this guy, they were horrible. And he took the photographer to Beis Din. There were different rabbonim who had come to the chasna, and he'd not had the picture of the yomim that went on, and the whole record with the Rav, with the Rosh Hashiva, and that's it. There's no chalois kiddushin if there's no pictures. Reb Shlomo Zalman said, who's the most important person at a chasna? He said it's the photographer, because the photographer pushes away the Masadi Kiddushin. He must be more cautious. Either way, so he wasn't having any of it. He took him to Beis Din, and the Dayan thought, he said I did, he says he didn't. The Dayan thought for a moment, and he says, I want you to pay him, and I want you to be Mevater. And in that zechus, this year you'll have a child. You'll have to wait. The guy says, children, I want my pictures. Yeshiva Bacha, I want my pictures. There was an Avrech sitting in the room learning how to be a Dayan. And he jumps on the Metzia. And he says, my sister hasn't had children for 10 years. I'll pay the photographer. Just give me that zchus. Suddenly the chosin sees here, there's business here to do. Maybe it wasn't so good that I didn't give in. And he said, I'll pay. The Dayan says, you've given up. He said, please. The Dayan thinks a few minutes, and he said, Chosson, you pay, and you who wanted to pay, you'll both have a Yeshua. And they both had a Yeshua. Within 12 months, they both had a child. Incredible, the koyach of Vitul. I'll tell you a very Israeli story. It happens, and one of the biggest challenges in being Mevater is when building work is done amongst neighbors. So there was a little bit of a dialogue, a discussion between two neighbors about a certain separating wall that was supposed to separate, and the question was, who should pay for that wall? And an ongoing discussion ensued, sometimes with raised tones and etc., as everyone can imagine, in the Middle Eastern temperament, until one guy decided he's going to be Mevater. He's going to be Mevater. So he went straight to the Kablan, and he said, how much does this dividing wall cost? And you'll sometimes be surprised how little money such a big machlokas can be about. And he said, 5,000 shekel. Okay. He said, listen, I owe you 15,000 shekel for other work you do, so I'm going to write you a check for 20,000 shekel, and deal's done, I've paid for it, Sholem al Yisrael, shake hands with the neighbor, hunky-dory, shlachmonas, everything's good. Time goes by, a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, and this guy is looking at his bank, and the check has never been cashed. Something strange. So he calls up the Kablan, although he's still dreaming that he's not going to cash the check, but he still calls him up. And he says, what happened to that check? It hasn't been cashed. So he said, well, actually, I passed on your check in true Israeli style. I passed on your check to one of the Arab workers because I needed to pay him. I owed him 20,000 shekel. Okay. So he asked the Kablan, please call up the Arab. So the Arab, with no busha whatsoever, he says that, well, I had a great plan because it was 20,000 shekel, but there was a little bit of room left in that little box where you write the figures. So I added a zero. It should be 200,000 shekel. Not bad for a good day's work in war times. However, Arabs are also dumb. And he didn't realize, nor did he know how to write. Even if he would have, he forgot that you have to write 20,000 shekel or 200,000 shekel. You have to change that as well. And that's a little bit more difficult than a little space in a box. And he forgot to do that. And the pkida, the woman behind the glass, got wind of what's going on. And this Arab legged it. And he said he doesn't want to be behind the clink. And he just ran away and ran off with it. And it never got paid. The guy was Mevater for 5,000 shekel, and he gained 20,000 shekel. That's what happens when you're Mevater. If you think, yeah, I'm waiting for this story to happen to me. But the truth is that it's not all about Olam Hazeh. It's true, we're waiting. I have a story, such a spanking story. I can't say over the story because I'm scared of any Lashon Hara involved, but somebody did something so terrible, and on Erev Rosh Hashanah, I was Mevater to him, and I paid him money that he doesn't deserve a penny of it. And I said, I'll at least, I'll be Mevater, I'll give him half the money, even though he doesn't deserve a dime. Erev Rosh Hashanah, he started screaming at me, אתה רשע, וזה, וערב ראש השנה, ואני יודע למה עשית, אתה לא מוותר, אני יודע, כי אשתך מצרפת, וצרפתים הם מדסדים, אני יודע, כי אשתי צרפתייה. He told me. I said, okay, this guy needs vitul. We need to be Mevater to him. I was Mevater to him, and in Mitzvah Hashem, I'm all, my hands are open, the Siyata Dishmaya, I'm sure. Tremendous things in my life are happening because of this vitul. Reb Steinman said, Nar ho'isi, gam zakanti, v'loi ro'isi mevater nezov. Never has he seen somebody who's mevater, who's lost out of it. And I hope that there's no women listening here. Reb Chaim Kanievsky said that it's really on the man to be mevater. It makes sense because the man was made out of earth. Earth is malleable. Earth is flexible. The woman is made out of bone. She's bone hard. And therefore, it's incumbent upon us, the men, to be mevater over the women. I want to share with you, in closing, a word that changed my life. David HaMelech takes Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah HaChitti, as a wife. And he sends off Uriah to battle. And Nathan Hanovi comes and he tells David HaMelech a moshel. And the moshel is supposed to be big time Musa to David HaMelech. And he says, imagine there was somebody and he was looking for a shetzela. He wanted a sheep. And there's a rich man who's got many sheep and animals. And there's a poor guy who's got one sheep. And the guy goes and takes the one sheep from the poor man. David HaMelech, what's the din? David HaMelech is very upset. He says that this man has to die. And he should pay 4 times for stealing the sheep. Novi says, do you hear what you're saying? You understand the marshal? Uriah had one wife, and you took her, Bathsheba. Well, that's the poshut way of learning it. But the Heilige Baal Shem Tov says such a deep shot, and it's a life changer. Everybody, every one of us, we paskan our own din. How we behave is how Hashem is done us. When I stand in the classroom and a boy is misbehaving and I'm about to clout him over the head, such a nudnik. And I think for myself for 1 second, I said, I'm also a nudnik to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All day, mess around, do stuff. If I paskin on this kid that I'm going to clout him over the head, that's how they're going to paskin in Shomayim on me. And if I'm a Mevater, and I say, let kids be kids, oh, give him a pinch on the cheek and carry on my day, then that's what's going to happen to me in Shomayim when there's something a din, and they're coming to Shomayim and they want din. And then they say, no, look at this guy, let's watch the video. How is he at home? How is he with his wife? How is he with his children? Is he a Midas Adin guy? What do you mean? What do you mean? And you're right. You're not wrong. You're right. He's stupid. She's stupid. They did the wrong thing. They're wrong. I'm right. But being Mevater, you save your life. Nosson HaNovi was telling David HaMelech how you were going to paskin in this moshel if you would have said, you know what? Yes, he stole from the poor guy, but you never know. Maybe he had a hard day. Maybe he needed it. Maybe he didn't see. Then David HaMelech would have got off with a different sentence. But David HaMelech paskined his own case. And this is what we do time and time again, daily. We're paskining how the Ribono Shel Olam, how the Beis Din Shel Ma'ala is going to treat us, how they're going to paskin our din. And we know that Chazal say, Kol adon lekav zechus. If you're don lekav zechus somebody, in Shomayim they don you lekav zechus. Kol ha'ma'avir al midoisav. Somebody's Mevater, even though you're right, ma'avirin lo al kol peshov. They wipe away others. What a freebie! What an open check from the Ribono Shel Olam. You can't not buy into such a thing. The Gemara says Yerushalayim was Chorav because they did not deal lifnim Yishuras Hadin. Big ma'av, you have to do lifnim Yishuras Hadin. No, the answer is Rochel Imeinu. Al Pi Din, they had no zechus kiyum. If they would have been the only kav zechus, If they would have gone Lifnei Meshuras Hadin, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would have had the opportunity to be Dan Klal Yisrael Lekavzachos Lifnei Meshuras Hadin. This is our mandate as we draw to the end of Tisha B'Av. And we want to go away with something that can really change our personal lives, change our interactions, and cause HaKadosh Baruch Hu trouble. Because when things go on the scale and it doesn't stim, it doesn't work out, there's only one way out. And that way out is if we're Mevater, then Avraham doesn't work, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, nothing works. But a Rachel Imeinu who cries and says, Avodah Zarah? Somebody else walked into your house? Be Mevater, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Hashem has no choice, Kiviyachol. When we're Mevater, Mavir lo yakol peshav. We should take this away with us, and not everybody in their home, in their lives, will be Mevater a little bit. Will cause the Rebbeinu Shalom to have to be Mevater on all the reasons that Mashiach hasn't come yet, and speedily bring Mashiach b'mheira b'yomeinu.
Hey, Litio.